It takes about 2 minutes to walk from the bus stop to the dorm. Suzanne Lyall never made it. By the end of this, you'll see exactly why investigators keep circling back to a 4-digit number. A number only 2 people on Earth were ever supposed to know. One evening, in March of 1998, a 19-year-old college student got off a bus 2 minutes from home and disappeared between the stop and the door. Suzanne Gloria Lyall was the youngest of Doug and Mary Lyall's 3 children, born in Saratoga Springs in 1978 and raised in nearby Ballston Spa. Her 2 older siblings called her the darling of the family, the kind of kid who'd run out of the shower, hair still wet, to write down a line of poetry before she lost it. Computers found her early. Her father brought home an old Commodore when she was about 10. By 12, she was taking it apart and rebuilding it herself, dialing into local bulletin boards to talk to people she'd never meet in person. She was good enough, fast enough, that when her professors at SUNY 112 couldn't keep up with what she already knew, she transferred in the fall of 1997 to the university at Albany, chasing an education that could actually challenge her. Transferring to Albany also brought her closer to her boyfriend, Richard Kindon, a few years older, a fellow computer enthusiast she'd started dating back in high school. He'd set up her computer so he could log into it remotely. They talked constantly online, when most of her generation barely understood what online meant yet. You're on that bus with her now, at least in your head. It's a route she'd taken dozens of times. The night before she vanished, Suzanne called her mother. It was Mary's birthday. Suzanne apologized for not coming home to celebrate. She needed to focus on a midterm, she said, one she felt she had to not just pass but ace. It was the last conversation they ever had. On March 2nd, she took that midterm, went to her other classes, and then to her evening shift at the Babbage computer store in Crossgates Mall. Her manager remembered her as subdued that night. She felt she'd done okay on the exam, nothing more. The store closed at 9. She boarded a Capital District Transportation Authority bus back toward campus. The driver later told investigators she got on. He couldn't say for certain she got off at her stop. He only knew she wasn't on the bus anymore by the time he reached the end of the route downtown. But according to a friend of Suzanne's, she saw her step off at the Collins Circle stop at approximately 9:45. That's the last confirmed sighting anyone has ever been able to establish. From there, it's a 2-minute walk to her dormitory. She never arrived. The next morning, Kindon called Doug and Mary Lyall. Suzanne hadn't come back to her room, and she wasn't answering his calls. According to the family, campus police, when first contacted, said this kind of brief absence wasn't unusual for a college student. She'd likely turn up. Her father didn't believe that for a second. By every account from those who knew her, Suzanne simply wasn't a risk taker. She didn't party, and she didn't drink or use drugs. If you want more cases work like this one, real sources, no filler subscribing helps us keep making them. Back to Suzanne. So who was right? The officer who assumed she'd walk back in on her own, or the parents who knew their daughter well enough to know something was already very wrong? It took 2 more missed classes and a second missed midterm before campus police agreed this wasn't routine and called in the New York State Police. By then, precious time was already gone, a delay Doug Lyall would later criticize for the rest of his life. What followed was one of the largest searches the area had seen. According to press coverage of the investigation, searchers combed several hundred acres around Collins Circle, wooded ground, a lake, the interstate embankment just across from campus, 270 leads, a $15,000 reward, flyers with her picture on every pole for miles. None of it produced a body, a suspect, or a witness who saw what happened after that bus stop. Then came the bank records, and this is where the case stops being simple. Suzanne's debit card had been used not once but 3 separate times at 3 different machines over 2 days. According to investigators, 2 of those withdrawals happened on March 2nd itself, the day she vanished. $20 in the morning near the Collins Circle bus stop. Another 20 at the mall around the time she'd have arrived for her shift. Ordinary. Almost certainly her. The third withdrawal is the one nobody has ever explained. The following afternoon, after she was already missing, someone used her card at a Stewart's Shop convenience store 2 miles from campus, in a part of the city her own parents said she never frequented. $20 again. The security camera covered the register. It never covered the machine. According to investigators, a man in a Nike baseball cap was seen near the ATM around that time, and police eventually found him. They came to believe he had nothing to do with it, but they couldn't completely rule him out either. 2 months later in May, according to investigators, a student found Suzanne's Babbage name tag, not a stray coincidence, but 90 feet from the exact bus stop where she was last seen. Not in the direction of her dorm, in the opposite direction. Investigators could recover no forensic evidence from it, and could never determine how long it had actually been sitting there. One clue that placed her at the stop, one that placed something of hers heading the wrong way, and a card used by someone somewhere who knew exactly what they were doing. There's one more piece, and it came from someone who worked beside her. A co-worker at the store told investigators that about a month before she vanished, Suzanne confided she believed a stranger was watching her, following her, in some vague way she couldn't quite pin down. She didn't say she was afraid of him. She just mentioned it, the way you'd mention something odd and then move on with your day. Nobody ever identified who that was, or whether he existed at all outside a feeling she couldn't shake. So, a last sighting at a bus stop. A trail of debit card withdrawals, 2 of them hers and 1 of them a stranger's. A name tag facing the wrong way. And a stranger she mentioned once, a month before she disappeared, and never mentioned again. What actually happened in the 2 minutes between that stop and her door? And did any of these threads ever actually connect to each other? Or were investigators chasing 3 separate ghosts? Start with the number. Whoever used Suzanne's card at that Stewart's the day after she disappeared entered the correct PIN on the first try. According to Richard Condon, only he and Suzanne ever knew that code. That single fact has kept his name in this case for 28 years, not as an accusation, but as a question nobody has ever been able to close. Condon told police he was home playing video games with a friend at the time Suzanne disappeared, and that friend confirmed it when asked. But afterward, he declined to take a polygraph and told investigators he'd only sit for further questioning with a lawyer present. As recently as 2023, New York State Police confirmed the case remains open and would not say publicly whether anyone, including him, has ever been formally ruled out. He has never been charged with anything. According to his family, he's since married and moved on with his life. The PIN is simply a fact that has never gone away. There's a smaller, quieter thread tangled up in the same relationship. 2 weeks before she vanished, Suzanne asked her mother to stop at Condon's house so she could drop off a Valentine's Day card. Nothing unusual happened that day, but years later, according to Mary, she's wondered ever since whether that card was actually something else, a goodbye, delivered in an envelope so nobody would have to say it out loud. Police never found any evidence Suzanne was involved with anyone else. It's a mother's private theory, not a documented fact, but it stayed with her for decades. He wasn't the only name police looked at. A convicted rapist who'd violated parole and left the area around the same time was briefly considered, tracked down out of state, interviewed, and excluded. According to investigators, in 2005, A man named John Regan was arrested for trying to pull a teenage girl into his van near Saratoga Springs, close to the Lyall's hometown, and they wondered if he could be connected. Even after his conviction, Regan refused to discuss the Lyall case at all. No forensic link was ever found to either man. Now picture that same 2-minute walk at that same edge of campus, but 13 years earlier. On March 27, 1985, a 22-year-old sunny Albany senior named Karen Wilson left a tanning salon on Central Avenue. 3 separate witnesses reported seeing her afterward, walking south toward campus, near the same lake, and interstate on-ramp investigators would later search for Susan. All 3 sightings happened within 10 minutes of each other, between 8:10 and 8:20 that night. Karen Wilson was never seen again. 2 students, 1 campus, 13 years apart, last seen walking the same stretch of ground toward the same buildings. Investigators openly considered whether the cases were connected. They found nothing that proves it. They also never found anything that rules it out, which leaves the case exactly where it sat for almost 3 decades. A PIN code, a name tag pointing the wrong way, 2 men who were investigated and cleared, and 1 earlier disappearance that might mean everything or might mean nothing at all. So which is it? Coincidence stacked on coincidence, or a pattern nobody has ever had enough evidence to prove? In 2018, a senior New York State police investigator said it plainly. "We believe it's a homicide. Is there a chance she moved away? It's a possibility, but the reality is she's probably been a victim of a homicide." As of 2023, the case is still officially classified as missing, not closed, still actively worked. But it didn't end in nothing. Within a year of Susan's disappearance, her parents began lobbying to fix what they saw as failures in how her case was handled. Starting with the days campus police spent assuming she'd simply turn up. A California couple, whose own daughter, Kristen Smart, had vanished from a college campus 2 years earlier, showed the Lyalls it could actually be done. On April 6, 1999, Suzanne's 21st birthday, Governor George Pataki signed New York's Campus Safety Act into law, requiring every college in the state to have a real plan for investigating a missing student. In 2003, President George W. Bush signed a federal version into the PROTECT Act, closing the exact gap that had delayed Suzanne's own case. Police no longer had to wait for a missing 18 to 21-year-old to be treated like an adult who'd probably just wandered off. In 2007, a nationwide version of the original New York law, the Suzanne Lyall Campus Security Act, became federal law too. 3 laws, 1 name attached to all of them. A 4th is still stuck, a bill that would raise penalties for violent crimes committed near schools and college campuses. It's passed the state Senate almost every year since 1999. It has never once reached a vote in the Assembly. Mary and Doug Lyall founded the Center for Hope in 2001, printing decks of playing cards with the faces of missing people and sending them into New York's jails, on the chance that someone locked up somewhere had seen something worth telling. Doug Lyall died in 2015 without an answer. Mary still lives in the house where they raised their 3 children. Suzanne's room is kept largely as she left it. Over the years, 75 separate psychics have contacted the family with tips, most involving water. In 2016, according to reports, Mary went along as investigators used sonar technology to scan the bottom of the Mohawk River. Near a bridge, she says she's never been able to cross without an odd feeling coming over her. Nothing conclusive was ever reported. She has never stopped looking. At conferences, in airports, anywhere she travels, she watches faces in the crowd. "I'm still hoping," she said. Somewhere between a bus stop and a door that was 2 minutes away, a 19-year-old disappeared, and everything found afterward, a card, a name tag, a number only 2 people knew, raised more questions than it ever answered. If you know anything, even something that feels small, New York State Police still have this case open. Suzanne Lyall, 2 minutes from home, still missing.